Neighborhood. This is the place where you're entitled to Brad's opinion. And now for your host, Brad Allard.
Well, nice, cold, breezy morning. How about you,
kidding.
Taylor? Did you freeze just the 5 steps to the door? It's cold.
Well, so I'm like really OCD about my car, and it has to be clean.
Oh, really?
So it was really dirty yesterday because of the rain. So I went this morning to get it washed.
Good plan.
But I had to dry it off, and it was freezing.
I bet it was. Hey, I'm looking at something right here as I'm, setting up the website here. What's this Twisted Sisters? I mean, I don't know if Alex is going to be listening today, but I'm going to need to get Alex Phillips on the phone. What is Twisted Sisters? Is it I don't know what it is. It looks interesting. I don't think it's a restaurant, but we'll see what happens which is, well, maybe it is. It says the food, atmosphere, and service are incredible. Get ready, Burleson. So that ought to be fun.
You were saying it was something we did.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Well, when I think of Twisted Sister, I thought we're not going to take it and all this other stuff, on a video with the guy from Animal House. That's dating me quite a bit, isn't it? You don't even know what I'm talking about. Anyway, today we're going to talk about immigration part 2. Lots going on, obviously. I'm not going to retrace a lot of what I talked about last Thursday, but I do encourage you, if you have time, to catch that first show as well, because I think there's some useful information in it. I'm sorry, I'm all clogged up. My daughter's ill, and I think I'm going to be ill, so that's just really, really great. Have you heard much about the COVID stuff going around?
Oh, I feel like everybody's getting it again. But, at what point is it just another flu?
Well, that's kind of how I look at it.
The flu isn't bad. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it like,
I don't think we're at like shut the world down level.
No, Lord, no. I'm not even sure that really did any good in the first place. So I'll tell you the truth. It sure did a lot of damage to a lot of the education. And that's another topic for another day. But anyway, we're going to talk about immigration. I'm trying to get everybody all booked up here or, shared with, make sure. But this is a topic also that has been greatly exaggerated by both sides for political purposes. You might find that hard to believe that people use something like this for political purposes, but that's exactly what's happened, as always. And I'm going to focus on a couple of comments by Mr. Biden and Mr. Trump that kind of leave me a little bit unsettled. And I'm going to bring in the great Ronald Reagan and his response to these kind of comments. God knows we could use Mr. Reagan again. I bet some of my Democrat friends could say that. So there you are. But anyway, let's just, before we jump into that deep pool, let's talk about our friends at Our Place. Thank you, Otto. It's a great place. This is a good time to go to Our Place, tell you the truth, because he has great, great soup and the pie and the coffee and all that. But he also good comfort food. When you're cold, you don't want a salad. You want, even though they do have that, you want chicken fried steak with some gravy and taters, right?
Oh, that sounds so good.
It doesn't, and you want a breakfast that's going to stick to your ribs. And so it's a good place to go. He's been doing the huevo rancheros, pushing that a little bit, and it's really good. Okay. If I had the wherewithal, I'd probably be there every breakfast. But my waistline and budget, I got to watch them both. But anyway, so thank you, Otto, for all you do. Also, thank you to Wild Cigar. It's going to be playoff weekend. It starts Saturday. They're going to have the playoff games on, and it goes from Saturday, Sunday, and a Monday night game. They'll have them all on, and you can go there and have a cigar and have a drink, and it's a good place to do it. And you can talk, and you can converse with your friends about the game and not have to shout at each other. That's a nice thing. I know sports bars are their thing, and I don't, it's fine and good, but I like a place I can go and actually converse, and this is a good place to do it. Also, thank you to our friends over at Local Life. Tiffany is doing well. She has sent out the new issue. It should be in your home already. I think she sent it out last week, in fact, and it's at various places of business, not just at the homes. 30,000 homes get it, but also a lot of businesses get multiple copies. And so while you're waiting on something, you can peruse through that. And so you get a lot of coverage at Local Life, more than just the mailing list. So give them a look if you're looking to expand your advertising in this area. Also, our friends over at Southern Gym. And they're open today, and they're back to regular hours, 10 to 5, and then they're going to be open this Saturday, I know. And just when you think you're out of the woods, men, no. In about 5 weeks is Valentine's Day. And so there you are. So back to, you gotta, if you kind of drop the ball at Christmas, here's your time to redeem yourself. So go to Southern Gym. If you got if you need sizing or repairs to be made, they can do that as well. So Southern Gym over at the Standard by American Revelry. Also, our newest sponsor, Two Maids with Brenda Ramirez. They do both commercial and residential cleaning. I've gotten to know Brenda from BNI, and she's just a wonderful person. She really is, and she does a lot of good things for a lot of people. And the best thing about them is that you pay based on what your recommendations are or your references are. And, instead of just an hourly rate or something like that, what they'll do is, after they come and do your place, they will ask you for an evaluation, and therefore you'll get, their ladies are paid based on that. Or actually, that's some gentlemen too. It's a pay-for-performance concept. So call them at 817-764-0733 or twomaidscleaning.com/Burleson. And you could do one time, or you can do a routine scheduled. It's a really good deal. And I really am impressed with this whole company. Also, thank you to our friend John over at Old Pro Roofing. It was raining the other day, and I didn't have to worry about it. And now it's windy and all this stuff going on, things flying around. My roof's solid because John told me so, and he didn't try to upsell me or nothing. So 817-734-2756. He's a local guy. He is a representative of a local company. They're over in Old Town. So, these are Burleson folks. Also, speaking of Burleson folks, Sammy and Candy over at Camco. Sammy Campbell is at 817-778-4592. Candy is at 817-925-2661. And if you're looking to refinance, if you're looking for a first-time finance, talk to them because they really know what they're doing. I've told all y'all before. I've done them twice with my refinancing, and it's quick. It's not as quick as can be. It's going to be a process, and they guide you through it without a lot of extra hassle. And they, so it takes a little time, 2-3 weeks, but they really are good at what they do. So, and they're local Burleson folks as well. So give them a holler. Okie dokie. Oh, do we still have Jessica's Snowman Spanish? Yes. And that's coming on February 2nd over at Live Oak at 6 o'clock. It's a fundraiser for Fitability TX. They still have sponsorship availabilities. They still have tables that you could purchase and whatnot. And, you can buy tickets for glasses of wine. And then a good deal of that, the proceeds will go to Jessica's group. And she was on last week. So if you want more details, she was on last Tuesday. So check out that podcast, if you will, and if you'll get more information. But she does really good work with the people with disabilities. I've been there. I've seen it in my own two eyes, so to speak, and it's really sweet how much they care about these clients of theirs. Okay, where do we go? Where's that? We're starting off with, we talked about with this particular focus last Thursday, about immigration, and it's at an all-time high. Illegal immigration, I mean. It's they've been keeping records for this really since about the beginning of the Bush administration. And up to this point, one of the worst years during this 24-year period was during the Bush administration, right after 9/11. I'm sorry, you're going to hear that a lot, I'm afraid. But it's been kind of ebbing and flowing and whatnot. But this past year has been an all-time record, and the Biden administration is going to break records with that. That we're going to be like Joe DiMaggio's hitting streak. I doubt they'll ever be broken. It basically is a full-on invasion, if you will. Now, that being said, we need to look at both the rumors, the myths, and the truths about what's being said about this immigration situation. Okay? And what you're hearing is a mixture of all of those things. A little bit of truth mixed in with a lot of hyperbole, if not outright crap. And so you gotta, you have to look at the details. You have to look at the stats and the data, and that's what I'm here to do. Actually, I'm hoping to do that. That's what I hope to provide to the listener is that, okay, when Trump says this or Biden says that, is that really true or not? Well, the thing is, I'll focus on Mr. Trump first. A lot of people look at Mr. Trump and they say he's just an outright liar. Actually, what makes Trump more effective, if you will, is that he doesn't completely lie. He just takes a fact and exaggerates it to a great degree. All right. such as do they bring crime and disease in this country and all this other stuff. Taylor, do you have that first clip that we had when he announced in 2015? I believe we do.
When do we beat Mexico at the border? They're laughing at us, at our stupidity. And now they're beating us economically. They are not our friend, believe me. But they're killing us economically. The U.S. has become a dumping ground for everybody else's problems. Thank you. It's true. And these are the best and the finest. When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're not sending you. They're not sending you. They're sending people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems with us. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people. But I speak to border guards, and they tell us what we're getting. And it only makes common sense. It only makes common sense. They're sending us not the right people. It's coming from more than Mexico. It's coming from all over South and Latin America, and it's coming probably from the Middle East. But we don't know, because we have no protection, and we have no competence. We don't know what's happening. And it's got to stop, and it's got to stop fast.
Okay, we're good there. Okay, what did Mr. Trump say that was a lie? Well, he did, that's the whole point. He didn't say anything that's 100% lies, but he does exaggerate to make an effect and also to make a point. Does illegal immigration increase crime? Does it increase diseases, like he's talking about now? Does it increase economic chaos? And it's a lot more complex than that. Now, let's look at the crime issue first. What was that screenshot we had from Forbes? They did a study. Does illegal immigration increase crime rates? And I believe we have that screenshot. Yeah, there it is. It says undocumented immigrants are half as likely to be arrested for violent crimes as U.S.-born citizens. Okay, so the idea that our crime rates have jumped up dramatically because of immigration is not really accurate. Now, yes, we can all point to episodes that are true about, some illegal immigrant here illegally committing a horrible crime, rape or murder or drug dealing or whatever else. Yes, and that happens. But the idea that that's primarily the effect of illegal immigration is not accurate. So be careful this election season, because you're going to see commercials that are going to show, some anecdote of some creep, somebody that is actually committed this kind of crime, and say this is indicative of all illegal immigrants, or this is an effect of it. We've had crime from illegal immigrants for a lot longer than the last couple of years, but it's the idea that our streets are overrun with illegal immigrant criminals is a high level exaggeration. Okay, so just understand that. I mean, the anecdotes they're going to show you are probably documentable and they're going to be true and all this, but that is not indicative of what's happening. Really, where the crime is happening is in Mexico. I was talking to an ex-student, a friend of mine, who shall remain nameless because he's helping some families in South America, not helping them immigrate, but just financially helping them there. And they say that it's very, very difficult to get through Mexico because you got all these drug cartels and all these smugglers, these coyotes as they call them, and they basically extort them for money. Mexico itself, the government of Mexico, charges these people $600 a piece just to cross through their land. And then when they get close to the border, you've got all sorts of problems about kidnapping and whatnot, and people forced to smuggle and whatnot. I'll read here from an article from the study from the Immigration Service itself. Over the last 10 years, migrant smuggling has transformed into a multi-billion-dollar international business controlled by organized crime, with less violent and less organized smuggling entities being co-opted by the larger, more dangerous transnational networks. Over 20,000 migrants are kidnapped per year. Violence attributed to drug cartels continues, killing tens of thousands of people yearly in Mexico. So most of this incredible violence that you're seeing is not occurring in the United States, but it's just down south. And there, like I say, it's a multi-billion-dollar business of people being smuggled into into the United States. And in some cases, they're being forced to pay ransoms for loved ones. In some cases, they're being forced to smuggle drugs in. And this is where we're getting all this. The real problem isn't so much that illegal immigrants are coming to the United States and they're forming these cartels. It's that the drug cartels who are making billions of dollars, apparently, are exploiting the situation down in Mexico itself. My point would also be is as long as we have the border porous as it is, as long as it's open as it is, there's going to be money to be made from it. The only way you could really stop those cartels is to have a more secure border. Now, here's the thing. I had some comments on my last show, and most of them are pretty respectful, but there's a couple like, are you in favor of open borders? No, I'm not. I'm just in favor of sane immigration, and I am in favor of much stricter immigration. And I'm in favor of having a rational policy of immigration where we deal with this problem as opposed to just letting thousands come into the United States and then releasing them. About 85%. I read this yesterday in the news as well, that Mayorkas, Secretary Mayorkas, who's head of Homeland Security, which is head of this particular aspect of our security, said he admitted in a congressional hearing yesterday that 85% of those that are encountered and apprehended are set loose into the country awaiting their court date, which we talked about last Thursday. 85% have been let loose into the country. Now, that's not true for everybody. And, there are some that are stopped and caught and put into a detention center, and the advocates focus on that. But 85% is a large percentage of people that we can't account for. Okay, once they leave into the country, we are basically relying on their good faith to come to these court hearings, which will be maybe 5 or 6 years into the future at the current levels of staffing we have. So to kind of sum this particular point up, crime in and of itself, but people that come here, the American-born, native-born Americans are much more prone for crime than these immigrants. And I'm going to guess for many reasons is many of those people are here to get work and help their families and all that business, which we can empathize with. And also they're not going to put their heads up, so to speak. They're not going to make themselves conspicuous, because if they are committing crimes and they do get captured, they know they'll be deported. So that particular aspect of it is, yes, there are crimes that are committed by illegal immigrants, but not to the degree that you're going to hear in the political hyperbole and rhetoric coming up in the next few months. How about the second point? This one is a little bit more accurate. What about, there's been criticisms of illegal immigration talking about diseases that they're bringing into the country. And that part is a little bit more accurate, because what you're having here is you're having a situation where a lot of these people are not inoculated against the diseases which we get inoculated at very early ages, like chickenpox and measles. They're on the rise. And chickenpox and measles in an adult is not to be taken lightly. It's much more serious than when you get it when you're like 10. But when you get it as an adult, it could lead to long-term problems, particularly, not just the least of it, shingles, which I've experienced, which is not fun. But the point is that a lot of these diseases that we have really kind of eliminated here in the United States are being revived here in certain cases. Measles, polio is coming on. I mentioned here, I'm looking at some of the news here, also something called Hansen's disease, which we know is leprosy. It's not very, very common at all in the United States. I'm going to be quoting from this particular article, which is, I believe, in Politico. It's from The Hill. That's right, The Hill, which is a blog that talks about political issues. Hansen's disease, more commonly known as leprosy, is another example. It's very rare in the United States, but has become endemic in Florida. According to the CDC, circumstances indicate that the source of the leprosy was international migration of persons with the disease. That's serious. Okay, now let's, all kidding aside, we that right there is a good, valid reason why we need a rational system. Now, back in the day, the 19th century, early 20th century, when they were coming through Ellis Island, they would send you right back home if you had tuberculosis or some other kind of contagious disease. I mean, they had boats waiting there at the docks at Ellis Island. So the idea that back in the early 20th century was basically an open border then is not exactly true. And we had illegal immigration then, too. If you didn't come through Ellis Island or other ports of entry, or you got here through other means, you'd be considered illegal. But they didn't really do much about it. All right? The point is that when you have a situation like this where your borders aren't secure, this is going to be a problem. And so when you hear about this in the political rhetoric, it's got a ring of truth to it. Again, let's keep it on the rails here. I don't want to say we need to keep these people out because of that. But we can't just let people all in and then find out that they're bringing things into the country that we had eliminated. You know, polio and measles are pretty much a thing of the past, and now it's reviving. Okay? And so some advocates say that we need to provide health care for these illegal immigrants. California, for example, I mentioned in the last show, is going to provide it. I think that's a terrible idea myself because of the huge expense, and I think they've vastly underestimated how much demand there'll be for that. But that's we talked about that Thursday. Also, what about the economic impact of it? Okay, this is a mixed bag. Well, here's the thing, and I'm going to also be quoting from a columnist that wrote, I'm reaching for it now. I wrote a really good column, Mark Thiessen, the Washington Post, who's a conservative. You know, Washington Post gets all this criticism for being a liberal outlet, and maybe the reporting is a bit left, but they have a fairly balanced opinion page because it's not only Mark Thiessen's on it, but also George Will and Jim Garrity of National View. So they do have conservative commentators, and Thiessen's one of them. And he basically was saying that the economic impact of their country is a mixed bag because a lot of people say, well, they come here and they don't pay taxes. Okay, well, the answer is yes and no. They don't pay income taxes. Okay, they're almost always going to be paid in cash or some other, they're not going to be filling out W-2s and all this other stuff. They don't pay income tax, but neither does, which is the English, I know, neither does about 48 to 49% of the American public. And I'm not talking about because they're cheating. It's just they don't make sufficient income. After you apply the deductions and credits, they don't have to pay income tax. So close to half the American people themselves don't pay income tax. So to me, that's kind of a mixed criticism, okay? They do pay taxes in the sense of sales tax. They don't pay property taxes. Very few illegal immigrants are going to own property. The landlords will be paying that tax. But as far as sales tax, they do pay for tax through that way, and excise taxes when they buy gas or whatever. So they do pay taxes of a sort, just not all the range of taxes. They obviously don't pay Social Security taxes, but nor are they recipients of Social Security as illegal immigrants. And so so that part is kind of a wash. What they do provide in terms of economic benefit is that they do work a lot of jobs that Americans won't take. There's a lot of employers that employ illegal immigrants, which technically is against the law. And you can be rated by the government and be fined as an employer, but numerous employers, large and small, use illegal immigration as labor force. And we have millions of unfilled jobs. Okay, I'm quoting Thiessen. The fact is we need legal immigrants. We do need, and I do stress legal, and he does too. We do need legal immigrants. There are 8.7 million unfilled jobs in the United States, and there are not enough native-born workers to fill them. According to the Census Bureau data, the U.S. population is now growing at less than replacement levels. The only thing stopping us from overall population decline is immigrants, who are projected to account for 88% of the U.S. population growth through 2065. This is not a new occurrence, guys. In history, this back in like 1900, 1 out of 3 Americans, or people here, if you will, if you want to be particular, were either born in a foreign country or their parents were. And so, so we've had higher levels of foreign population counts in our system before, last century. But here, we don't have enough people to fill the jobs. And I talked to several people, sponsors in particular, potential sponsors and others that particularly work in the service industries, construction industries, restaurant industries, whatever else. And that's why I'm always praising Otto, because he doesn't have this problem because he keeps his staff. But other people I know, they have a very, very difficult time keeping staff. And they get a very difficult time finding people that are willing to work and come to show up and, and all this. And so we do have a shortage of labor in this country. And you look at a lot of the jobs these illegal immigrants are doing, yard work, construction work, road construction, things of that nature. The thing is that a lot of companies will shave their expenses by hiring these people. And we say, well, we're exploiting the workers. Not really, because they're coming here for that. And whatever they're doing here is better than what they figure, than what they were doing back in their home country. And so my point with all of this is that they do, on that end of it, they do provide some sort of economic benefit. Now, the economic cost is in terms of what's happening in our public hospitals and our schools. Okay, in Texas law, we don't base their educational eligibility, that's the word I'm looking for, eligibility by citizenship, it's by residency. And so if they live within the BISD district or the Joshua ISD district, they're going to be taught, and we don't even ask the questions. This is not, Bleeding Heart BISD or Joshua ISD. This is the state law that we don't ask questions. This law was signed by Rick Perry, who also signed the law that allowed undocumented immigrants, children of them anyway, to attend Texas colleges at in-state tuition, which was very controversial. But anyway, the point I'm making is that they do, but they are, particularly in the urban areas, particularly in the areas that are heavily Hispanic, you're going to have some very overcrowded situations. And it is an expense to the county and to the state. And this is what we talked about last week. I showed clips of Eric Adams yelling and hollering about how they're pressuring the New York City hospitals, and the mayor of Chicago, how he's yelling about how it's pressuring a lot of their public services. That is true. It is an expense, and it's an expense that the federal government, for whatever reason, under Biden, has been very reluctant to contribute to, because I guess they don't want to be held politically accountable. And so Adams is getting a lot of criticism, by the way, from the Democrats for mouthing off about all this. They basically want him to shut up about it. But you look at the major cities, El Paso, the mayor of Denver came out last week and said that they're at capacity. Seattle. So it's not just border cities like Eagle Pass, which has become like the focal point of all this, but Miami, and I mentioned Chicago and New York already. It's become a problem in just about every major community that you want to think of. And again, I want to emphasize another thing about it. Are these immigrants migrating themselves up to Chicago and New York? In some cases, yes. In some cases, they're being bussed there by Rick Perry. But they're, again, not Rick Perry, good God. I'm dating myself. Greg Abbott, let's say that. Greg Abbott is getting a lot of criticism. And last week, they filed a suit against the U.S. government. And the government filed a suit against them. Y'all may be aware that now under state law, as long as it's not going to be knocked down yet, that local law enforcement can arrest illegal immigrants, which prior to that, they could not. So the sheriff's department, the local police could not arrest illegal immigrants for being here illegally. And so the Department of Justice, that misnamed organization, is going to be suing the state of Texas, and the state of Texas is suing them. Also, the state of Texas has put up barriers to entry that the federal government says illegal and unconstitutional. That's the walls, the wire, all this other aspect of it. And that's in court, and it's being appealed right now. Right now, they're allowing to keep it because of an early court ruling, but it's going to go all the way to Supreme Court like everything else does. So they kind of reiterate, I kind of took a little detour here between Texas and the federal government. The point is, though, that when you hear that they're costing us economically a great deal, that's kind of true and kind of not. Yes, it is an expense on the public level for schools and hospitals and clinics and things of that nature. A big one. But on the other hand, they work at jobs at lower pay that Americans aren't willing to take. And if anybody's ever worked with immigrants, like I did when I was much younger, when I was doing lawn maintenance and whatever else, they show up and they work. And they're not here to rock the boat. So it's a mixed bag again. Yes, is a burden on one hand, but it's also a burden. You have to admit that the business community is willing to push off into the public sector. You get a situation where they're using mostly undocumented labor, but they're not contributing much into the expense that's going on with the schools and the hospitals and clinics and whatever else. So we also need to look at not just, these immigrants as costing us and all this other business, but American businesses are also exploiting them for that. And they're basically pawning off their expense onto the public. So there's that. Now we get to the politics. Mr. Biden, I'll say this right. Mr. Trump said something that really concerned me. I'm going to introduce us to a concept called blood and soil politics. What blood and soil means when it comes to these kind of issues is that a nation is built on the land and the blood connections of its people. And the reason why this seems foreign to us is the United States is not a blood and soil country. It's a country founded on a concept. Russia is not founded on a concept. Neither is Hungary or Poland or Germany. They're based on the idea that we are this race by blood and heritage and religion, and this is our land that we've had since time immemorial. That's the whole purpose, supposedly, of the Ukraine war, is that Russia feels like that land that Ukraine occupies is theirs by right because these Ukrainians are basically has stolen Russian land that belongs rightfully to the Russian people by heritage and whatnot. It's a factor in the Hamas-Israel war. Hamas is not like your typical, Muslim-based group, even though they are Muslim-based. That they are also a blood and soil group. They look at Palestine as that's our land. And these are our people by blood, and Israel is stolen it from us. Germany, back in the Nazi days, that's exactly what they did. That famous Lebensraum is that the Germans were entitled to big chunks of Czechoslovakia and Austria and Poland and Western or Eastern France and whatever else because of their race and their historical ownership of that land. That's what Mr. Trump has introduced into this whole conversation. I'd go to that third one, I believe it is, Taylor.
The third clip or the second one?
No, I think it's the third clip. That second one's with the CNN clip. So let's go to the third one.
All right.
When they let, I think the real number is 15, 16 million people into our country, when they do that, we got a lot of work to do. They're poisoning the blood of our country. That's what they've done. They poison mental institutions and prisons all over the world, not just in South America, not just the 3 or 4 countries that we think about, but all over the world. They're coming into our country from Africa, from Asia, all over the world. They're pouring into our country. Nobody's even looking at them. They just come in. The crime is going to be tremendous. The terrorism is going to be. And then we built a tremendous piece of the wall, and then we're going to build more.
All right. Let me address one issue briefly about terrorism. They have captured a handful of terrorists trying to cross into the border. Again, we don't know how many are here because, again, when I mentioned 85% are basically unaccounted for, and we are getting immigrants from all over the world that are trying to crash the border, not just from Latin America. However, the Border Patrol themselves have said that they've caught very few acknowledged or FBI-designated terrorists. That hasn't been the problem as much. You look at 9/11, those 14 men that crashed the towers and the Pentagon and tried to crash more, if not for Flight 93's heroism. They were all here legally. They were all Arab citizens here legally on with green card visas to get educated. So most terrorists really don't go through illegal immigration processes. They're here infiltrating us through other processes, legal processes. So the idea that terrorism is going to increase across the United States, that's always going to be a possibility, but the point is that that's not the main problem with illegal immigration, is that hundreds and thousands of terrorists are entering into the border. At least the government's own stats say that that's not the biggest problem. Now, again, because of the loose handling of things, we really don't know how many may be out there. But to say it's going to happen like Mr. Trump just did is political talk. But let's talk about the blood and soil and the poisoning our blood. The United States is not founded on blood. It's not founded as a race. There is no American race. We come from all over. I look at my own family background, and it encompasses about 5 or 6 different countries. Okay? And I bet everybody listening to this, too, unless they're a first-generation immigrant or something like that. Almost everybody that's been here for a few generations could say the same thing. That, in my family we have German, we have Irish, we have Swedish primarily, and on the other side, it's a lot of it was Scots, Irish, and English, and a little German. So the thing is, we're all mixed race. We don't have an American race. We don't have American blood, and so he comes in and said they're poisoning our blood. The people that criticize that as fascist talk have a point, because that's exactly how fascists have been talking, not just Hitler or Mussolini, but also the fascists in Germany now, or in Hungary, or in other countries around the world that have far-right totalitarian governments that use race and blood as a means of identifying the people, so to speak. And it's our right to do this. Again, I'll point out Ukraine. That's a prime example of blood and soil politics. Now, I'm going to quote my man, Ron Reagan, on this, because I really do believe that Ron Reagan had probably the best grasp of immigration. He himself was the descendant of Irish immigrants, and at one time they were considered to be poisoning in our blood. But anyway, I'm going to look at what he said. Okay. Reagan says that, this is back in 1986, the idea of human freedom is not built on blood and soil, because we are the first nation in history not built on blood and soil. Anyone can become an American. Our mixed breed heritage distinguishes us. You can go live in France, but you cannot become a Frenchman. You can go live in Germany or Turkey or Japan, but you cannot become a German or a Turk or a Japanese. But anyone from any corner of the earth can come and live in America and become an American. Because we are built on an idea. That's why they're coming here. Okay? That's why all these immigrants are coming here, because we're built on an idea. And when you have people that are saying things like they are, like Mr. Trump is, then that's frightening, because that kind of rhetoric and that kind of talk is going to lead to some of the more extreme elements that follow him into taking on action. I look at a lot of my friends that are Trump voters, and a lot of them are Trump voters. They have no desire to act like that towards other people. Okay, I'm not gonna throw everybody under the bus like Joe Biden did last Friday night. Joe Biden said that basically anybody who voted for votes for Trump is a threat to democracy, and these MAGA Republicans are going to destroy our country. That's just extreme, violent rhetoric on the other side. I'm going to get to Mr. Biden in just a minute, because he's surely not exempt from this. But the point is that most of the people I know that vote for Trump are not like this at all. But there's going to be that fringe element that's going to take this too seriously, or take Trump at face value, and that's where the danger is. Most of these fascist movements that were in European history were minority movements anyway. But people are really hesitant to call Mr. Trump a fascist. Well, on this particular one, they got him, because this is exact blood and soil is the rhetoric of the far right, not conservative, not Republican, but the far right. So let's talk about Mr. Biden. I mentioned already my criticism of him. My two biggest criticisms, he's involved in the same thing, but he's not talking about illegal immigrants. He's talking about American citizens. Friday night he gave a speech in Pennsylvania where basically who called everybody that voted for Trump a MAGA Republican is a threat to democracy, and it's very, very same thing as Hillary Clinton's basket of deplorables that cost her the election, I believe, in 2016. How in the world is Mr. Biden thinking he's going to run again and lead the country by calling a large percentage of people deplorable, despicable, un-American, which is what he's doing? How in the world are we going to come behind him as a president when he basically has scorn, disdain, and abuse for anybody who didn't support him? Reagan never did that. Clinton never did that. And I'm not a big fan of Clinton at all. George W. Bush didn't do that. Obama was a bit dismissive and arrogant about it. I have to admit that clinging to guns and Bibles was a good giveaway. But the point is that Mr. Biden is using harsh rhetoric against people that don't support him or his policies. And as far as his policies, I don't even know what they are. They talk about it this way and how, and you get that Jean-Pierre, the press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, whom I'm not fond of at all. I think she's the worst press secretary of all time. And how they deported 142,000 people. Well, that's a drop in the bucket, actually. But the other part is that they talk about their policies and how they're working. They're not working even remotely. And then he blames others. He gave a speech a few years ago that talked about his view about illegal immigrants. Okay, if you'd show that one.
11 million people living in the shadows, I believe they're already American citizens. Teddy Roosevelt said it better. He said, Americanism is not a question of birthplace or creed or a line of descent. It's a question of principles, idealism, and character. These people are just waiting for a chance to be able to contribute fully. And by that standard, 11 million undocumented aliens are already Americans, in my view.
Okay,
all they
good.
want.
I'm good. They're not Americans. Now, I agree they're coming here for a better life and all that, but this is one reason why immigration stops dead in its tracks, because you got a large portion of the Democrat Party who wants to just give amnesty. Now, Reagan gave amnesty in 1986, and a lot of Republicans look upon that as a big mistake. And I'm really kind of appalled how some of the Republicans have trashed the memory of Ronald Reagan. It's sad because I don't think Ronald Reagan could get a cup of coffee from the Republicans now, and I think it was the very standard of Republican Party politics. But the point is that they're not Americans now. They came here maybe for reasons that you and I can empathize with, but the fact is they came here without the proper process, and that does matter. And a lot of people say the only reason the Democrats want to make these citizens is that they'll vote Democrat. Maybe yes and maybe no. I mean, you look at the polls now, and Trump is doing pretty well with the Hispanic vote. He's actually beating Biden in some of the polls with the overall Hispanic vote, and he's actually coming competitive with the black vote, which hasn't happened since, since early last century. So the point is that, this idea that the Hispanic community, particularly in the United States, welcomes illegal immigrants is totally wrong. They don't, because they are often competing for space and jobs and education and places to live and whatever else. And the primary burden of illegal immigration is falling upon the poorest parts of town. It's not like these illegal immigrants are going to Overton Park or South Lake unless they're there to work the lawns. The point is that they're, where they live and where they go to school and where they get their services is all just impacting the poor areas of town a great, great deal. But the idea that they may vote Democrat, the stats will tell you that that's more the likelihood. But that's really beside the point for me. It's not just because how they'll vote, but should they be able to vote by coming here without the proper processes, without being vetted by the United States. And I mean vetted for, like, I don't want people coming here that have criminal records, and supposedly under the law, if they do have a criminal record, they're not allowed to come in. But again, we know what's going on, so that's probably not happening. And so I have to go back to that point. I'm getting off the topic a little bit because I really didn't emphasize this enough. The people that are most impacted by illegal immigration are the Hispanic and black populations of our country. And that's one reason I believe Mr. Trump is gaining ground with them in the polls. And you look at some of these areas down South Texas, 3 counties down in on the border, like Starr County or Hidalgo County, they went Republican for the first time ever in the last election because they're the ones bearing the burden. But as far as this used as an issue, Mr. Biden's going to try to make you feel guilty about not opening these people or welcoming these people with open arms. And that's not good either. Also, he's blaming, of course, the Congress for his ineptitude. I think, what was the one I sent you yesterday, Taylor? Do you have that one?
President Biden is blaming congressional Republicans for the record number of migrants crossing the border last month.
They are
give me the money I need to protect the border.
Stop right there.
His remarks come as the
Taylor,
U.S.
will
is
you back it up
reopening
a
ports.
little bit and freeze frame it? I want because you probably couldn't hear it very well. The quote he gave. Okay, we ought to do something. We got to do something. He says. I'm reading it right. We got to do something. You ought to give me the money I need to protect the border. That's a bold-faced, cotton-picking lie, Joe Biden. They have given you ample opportunity for money for that, and you keep rejecting it. What the Republicans have done they've tied immigration control and border security with Ukraine and Israel aid. Their point is that if we're going to support Ukraine in their defense and Israel in their defense, we need to support the United States in our defense. I can't argue with that. And Joe Biden acting like, we got to do something. You know, I really want to. I want to make this work. Joe Biden has done nothing the last 3+ years as president. Nothing. So him to blame Republicans for all this is typical politics and typical Joe Biden. There's been ample times that the Republicans, particularly the House Republicans, some of them, there's a few in there I could do without, but the House Republicans as a whole have given him opportunity to receive funding to increase border security, increase the number of border patrol, and all this other business. And Biden's going to tell you in his election, we've increased the number of border agents by this much and border agents by that much, and all this other stuff. But the truth is, no one believes that this is effective, and he just does not do anything about it. And I think some of that's politics, and I think some of that's incompetence. I don't know, Taylor, did you see this speech? Maybe you did or didn't. The clip at the end where he gave that speech at a location in Pennsylvania about this, where he called the MAGA Republicans evil and vile, and then he starts wandering around the stage, and finally his wife, Jill Biden, had to lead him off the stage like a toddler at Kmart. It's frightening to me. I mean, it's funny to watch, but then it dawns on me how frightening it is.
It's terrifying.
Yeah, because he's so, I really do believe he's oblivious. And that's a cheap shot, some people think, but no, I really do believe that his mental capacity is such that he can't deal with this problem. I'm not going to get into all the conspiracy theories about who's really behind him and all that. I'll do that in another show maybe, but that's not the point. I mean, a lot of people say, it's Obama's behind him and all this other stuff. I don't know. And it's another show. But the point is that that he has done nothing for this border problem except blame others and excuse it or whatever. It's just fluctuating numbers. Well, they always go up in the summer, and that Ms. Jean-Pierre will say, well, this is to be expected because they're so great. Well, okay. And I think the biggest reasons why Joe Biden's numbers are so appallingly bad for an incumbent president who is in legitimate danger of being defeated by Donald Trump, who has 91 felony counts, as I keep hearing, and all this other stuff, and his story is well known. There's really nothing else we're going to learn about Donald Trump. And he's still losing. He's losing in all the states. Another set of polls came out. He's behind in most of the swing states. And they say, well, wait till the election starts and people start taking it seriously. I think they're taking it pretty seriously. There's not going to be some October surprise, as they call it, like in the last election or 2016, where, some tape of him saying some naughty things to a entertainment reporter came out and shocked the world. There's a stunner. But the point is that there's not going to be anything that's going to shock us about Donald Trump. You either love him or you hate him, and it's not going to change your opinion. And Biden's losing to him. And the Democrats know this, even though they start talking, well, wait till the economy gets better. The economy is scuffling. I don't care what the data says. We all know it is. I've talked to my sponsors. I've talked to my friends at BNI. I shop at the grocery store. And car repairs are up. I've found out. Housing and cars and everything is out of reach. And then you put this on top of it, this immigration issue on top of that. If I were the Democrat strategist, I'd start to be really, really worried. And if they think Kamala Harris is going to be the answer to the problems, good luck with that. Oh, I am concerned about this coming election. I really am. What I'm really concerned about, two things. One is the demonization of both sides. You're going to have Trump demonizing people that oppose him. He called them vermin in one speech. He's going to demonize these legal immigrants who we may not like having them here, or we don't like this problem at all, but I think a lot of us should empathize why they're here. A lot of people say they're here for welfare. Well, not really. Not at all. There's always going to be that bum, but most of the bums are back home. A lot of these people are families trying to get out of the terrible situation they're in. But also Mr. Biden calling a large portion of the country threats to democracy and morally corrupt and evil. How are you going to lead the country after that? And so that's what I'm really afraid of, is this massively divisive campaign. And it's going to lead to further and further inflammation of rhetoric, hard feelings, potentially violence before and after the election. Those conventions in the summer, the Republicans are in Milwaukee, I believe, in late July, and then in early August, the Democrats foolishly chose Chicago, which already is a war zone. And I think it's going to be just chaos, particularly if the war in Israel and Ukraine are still going on. So buckle up, guys. We're going to have a lot of fun. And by the way, speaking of election seasons, our turn. Candidate packets are available now at City Hall. You have about 5 weeks roughly to fill them out and fill them out correctly. And don't wait to the last minute. That's always kind of a scaredy cat move. If you think you're a really good candidate, you should throw your name out there and take whatever opponent comes at you, as opposed to waiting to see, well, which one's the most winnable for me. No, if you think you're got the stuff to be a city council person or a school board person, get after it. Speaking of school boards and city councils, we're going to have some candidates coming on next Tuesday. Victoria's going to be on, and last night apparently they were talking about expansion to City Hall and moving and all this, so we'll have that. And then I have Mr. Matthew Lucci on the 23rd and Mr. Tim Good on the 29th. I'm hoping for some more, but I haven't heard back from them yet, from the others. But Thursday, I'm going to talk to Melissa Miller. Hopefully she's doing better. I'm going to talk about the Chamber of Commerce, what's going on. So be here at 11, learn lots, and take care of yourselves.